I'm Dr. Ben Hughes, Reader in Energy at the University of Sheffield. Received my scholarship in 2007 and elected a senior scholar in 2009.
What attracted you to the scholarship?
To be honest, I had not heard of the scholarship. I self-funded my studies through degree level. ONC, H&C was paid for by my company, which is Shell UK. And at the final year of my undergraduate degree at Sheffield Hallam University, there was a new lecturer employed there who was a Whitworth Scholar, and he turned me on to the Senior Scholarship Award to support postdoctoral research. So up until that point, I had not come across it.
And to those who are not familiar with the scholarship, what makes it unique and what makes it an exciting program?
The uniqueness is that it's aimed at people that left school at a young age and went into the apprenticeship route. So traditional route into university is you do your A-levels and you become an undergraduate and a postgraduate and you pursue that route. For a lot of people like myself, if that route's close to you, you go down an apprenticeship route and you end up as a craftsman and spend a long period on the shop floor. And this scheme really is to try and get those people that have got ambitions to go into higher education but probably haven't got the confidence and or the financial ability to do so. So that's the uniqueness.
So did you work your way up through that route? Did you do an apprenticeship? Did you go up that way?
So I left school at 16 with a few GCSEs, a bad attitude, a bit of a chip on my shoulder, and took an apprenticeship at Shell, and that ironed out the bad attitude, working with senior engineers, and I did an ONC and H&C, H&D, and then I was quite happy for a few years, and then family circumstances changed and decided that I needed to do something more. Signed up for a part-time degree at Sheffield Hallam, self-funded it, but the problem with that route was that I was working night shifts, day shifts, probably 48 hours a week and trying to study. But once I graduated with a first class degree. There was a full-time PhD programme available, which I wanted to do, but the financial difficulties, because I already had a mortgage and things like that, were so high that it put me off. But the Whitworth Scholarship allowed me to quit my job and concentrate full-time on doing a PhD. So without it, I couldn't have pursued a full-time PhD.
And now you've been involved in some really interesting projects. Would you be able to tell us about some of the highlights of your day-to-day work and what kind of projects you've been involved in?
Yeah, I hesitate to call it work really, because I always think that you're working with the best people in the country, even students, academics, and it's not really work, it's a pleasure. So some of the things, my area is energy and buildings, so some of the things I did for my PhD was develop cooling systems. I spent a couple of years on secondment in Dubai setting up an energy program for Whitworth University in Dubai. And through that, I started doing research with Qatar and developing residential cooling systems, which then led into, around about that time, they were awarded the World Cup for 2022. And we were fortunate enough to receive some funding to carry out research into the new thermal comfort criteria, and we helped design the new stadium cooling for the new World Cups.
And that's already it's at quite an advanced level already.
It is, yeah. The first stadium was launched Q3 of last year, and it's the first ever open-roofed cooled stadium, and now they're going to roll out the same system across the remaining stadiums, and we are looking into innovative and low energy cooling systems for the fan zones and transfer zones between hospitality areas and the main stadium.
So Joseph had dozens of patents. He was an innovator, he invented things, he created things. You've also done a little bit of that. Would you be able to share some of that with us?
Yeah, so right from my PhD, it was industry sponsored, so we developed some new technologies for the sponsoring company. They went on to market that. The university received some funds from that. So moving on with the same model, I've continued that research and developed a number of low energy cooling wind towers and HVAC products. And instead of selling those to a company, we've developed the products and we sell them on to partner organisations, and any funds we make we put back into the university, and that funds new PhDs and new research into smart buildings and smart homes. So we have a university spin-off company that I run as well as my full-time academic job, and we just pump it more into R&D.
And has earning that medal benefited you? Has it had an impact on your life?
I think it's had two big impacts. The medal itself is nice to have, but the most important thing is the network of contacts within the Whitworth Society. So, as I said, there's two things about joining the society. One is the confidence, and the money's sort of secondary. and you find that you've got a network of people that have been on the same journey, and that gives you confidence, but also you can pick up the phone and get some advice, and that still exists today. So even though it's 8-9 years since I got my medal, I can still pick up the phone to any of the Whitworth scholars, and they can pick up the phone to me, and we'll help each other out. So it's a big difference.
Looking at engineering in Britain, looking at engineering around the world, what do you think are the biggest challenges at the moment that engineers face?
There's lots of challenges, but I mean the biggest challenge has always been around climate change and energy and food security. But energy's got to be the biggest global challenge, because there's a finite amount of resources, and we either control what we're using. At the minute we've got a society that's grown up with smart gadgets and smart tools, and we just consume at a rate that's unsustainable. So the biggest challenge really is about getting us to maintain this style of living that we've become accustomed to and keep improving it, whilst using the finite set of resources we've got.
And for the engineering industry itself, the challenges that it faces in creating good engineers, innovation, competing with the rest of the world, what do you think are the most urgent areas there?
I think in this country we've done quite a lot of work, and we'll continue to do quite a lot of work, especially in universities, about creating this track now. So taking people from 16 on the similar path to I have, and taking them all the way through universities. So it's about providing a skilled workforce that's going about things in a different way. So if you look at some of the advanced manufacturing parks at Sheffield and up at the University of Strathclyde, they're all geared to developing the latest technologies and tools to make us the lowest cost manufacturing base in the UK. And I think that's really where our strengths are now.
And do you think that there are engineers, good engineers, coming through now regardless of sex, race, etc.? I mean, do you think that there's a lot of advances that have happened in terms of diversity in engineering?
I'd like to think so. I'd like to think that my generation certainly doesn't see colour or gender, but I think those challenges will always remain. We can always do better, and I think one of the things about the Whitworth Society that is particularly strong is that if you look at our gender balance, it's pretty much 50-50.
If we imagine that Sir Joseph had to appear today on the streets of London and just take a look at the world around him, what do you think he'd make of engineering in the modern age?
I think he'd embrace it. I think if you look at the history of Sir Joseph, he was always a pioneer, and I think he'd probably be at the forefront of some of our advances in manufacturing that we're making today. So I think he'd embrace it, and I think we'd probably be further forward than we are now. I think once in a generation, a truly inspirational leader comes along, and I think whichever generation you put them into, there will always be that leader. I think it's natural.
If you were to speak to people who are considering the scholarship, or young engineers in general, I mean, what would your overarching message be to them?
Have no fear. I think that's the biggest message. I'm sure there are many people looking at the scholarship and looking at the list of scholars and being put off, thinking that they're not at that level. But the reality is that if you were at that level, you wouldn't need the scholarship. So apply, come to speak to us. We can help, and just believe in yourself. Really, it's a confidence issue more than anything else. We're all equal.